Hey, so we've got some breaking news. It looks like Disney Plus subscriptions are going to decline by 1% quarter to quarter. That's down 6% for Disney Plus Hotstar. But here's the big news that it'll be interesting to see how Wall Street reacts to this. The US and Canada is essentially flat, according to the Hollywood Reporter. No growth whatsoever, essentially, for Disney Plus in North America.
That's more or less kind of what I expected. I think we were talking about this a few hours ago. There was some indication that CNBC their analysts were expecting to see a few million in decline on Disney Plus overall. And I think I even made the comment. I said, I bet it's largely going to come from places like Hotstar, which is India, because of the loss of the IPL or the Cricket League contract. Now, Disney still has the broadcast rights, the linear broadcast rights for the IPL in India. What they did not go after this time around was the streaming rights because they felt they were overpriced. And I tended to agree with them. Still like 90% of India gets delivery with linear. So that $3 billion or whatever it was they paid for the broadcast rights, I think was the right play versus the $2 billion or $3 billion for the streaming rights. So shedding, if the shedding has come from Hotstar, we're talking about an average revenue per user for them that's like 79 cents a month. I mean, we're talking about that's the ARPU from India, from Disney Hotstar, that drags the overall Disney Plus ARPU in the aggregate down. So that might not be a bad thing.
Well, so here's what I would say is negative for Disney, and right now everything I'm seeing, and we've got actually the report itself ready to go whenever you're ready in the private chat. But I would say that if you had a healthy growth level going into North America and other places, you would offset some of this. It doesn't seem that there was any offsetting because there's no growth occurring in North America. At least we don't have any kind of numbers internationally outside of India yet that I know of. But yeah, there's no growth in North America. And for a new streaming service, especially compared to Netflix and what Netflix is doing now, this is problematic. If you do a side by side comparison of Disney Plus to Netflix, I don't know what the response will be, but in my viewpoint, this is not a positive for Disney.
Probably overall, no. And I'm pulling up, I just pulled up the queue window for the live earnings call itself. I've got to get that situated in a separate window. But in the meantime, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pull in the actual earnings report. I just have to remember to switch back over to the other Chrome tab here before the live call. We have some time. I'm monitoring it. And no, we're not going to listen to the hold music this time because that got me punished in a few foreign countries I've never heard of last time. Copyright YouTube stuff. It was
just darn those Peruvian flute bands.
That's exactly what it was. So here we are. And Pro, let's kind of scroll down real quick because I'm going to get to this part about Disney Hotstar, or Disney Plus, since we're talking about this. So this is we can see the quarter over quarter at this point. Okay, where they started, where they finished. Domestic U.S. and Canada is up 200,000 subscribers roughly. But it wasn't even enough to mark a 1% change. You can see over here, the delta is basically left as nil. There's no change in the delta here. International, excluding Disney Hotstar, they picked up, it looks like, 1.2 million subscribers on the international side. And then Disney Hotstar itself, there it is. What I really, folks, I did not look at this before. You are watching this for the first time as I am looking at this for the first time. What did I just tell you was the case? They lost almost 4 million Disney Hotstar subs. That's India. That's because of the IPL. Nailed it. So there you go. And again, losing those 4 million subs, really not that bad of an issue for Disney. It's the stagnation, as Pro correctly pointed out, in North American growth that is maybe not what analysts are going to like. But it all is going to boil down to on the guidance, which really isn't here so much. We're going to get a little bit more of that in the Q&A session. We don't have time to go through every aspect of this report. But what the guidance is going to be for Disney Plus going forward. Now, if we look here, October 1st, domestic in Canada, the average revenue per user, $6.10, down at the end of the year to $5.95. That seems to clearly indicate that they are spending more on advertising and trying to acquire subs. And of course, they didn't really pick up any. I mean, nothing materially in
Well, now
the
let's
U.S. and
pause there,
Canada.
Valiant, because
Yeah.
there's something peculiar about that.
Mm-hmm.
So with that drop, what's odd about that is that they're losing subscriptions out of India, which we know
Mm-hmm.
are very, very cheap. At the same time that they're losing those low-end, low-revenue subscriptions in mass,
Mm-hmm.
they still somehow also came in lower on the average numbers. We're looking at domestic U.S. and Canada. We're looking at international. All of that is lower. So
Yeah.
Disney's really they don't have a pickup there that you would. I mean, that's the opposite of what I would have anticipated, given that they were going to add a new revenue stream.
Yeah. And you can see here, one of the things to take note is that even though the domestic, and on this top line here, let me highlight this to make it clear for everybody. Okay, domestic, this is just US and Canada, folks. So you can see the drop there. You can see we also had a similar drop in international, which is ex Hotstar, meaning it doesn't include India. And then we've got Disney Hotstar itself. They jumped 28% in ARPU. So it seems that either one of two things is happening. They've raised prices in India as well, or more likely they have been able to secure more lucrative ad revenue. Again, these details are in this report. This report just dropped 5 minutes ago. They're going to talk about all of this, including the details, in the earnings call coming up.
So here's another thing to watch for, Valiant.
Mm-hmm.
So they've dropped 2%, 4%, et cetera, on how much they're making per account. At the same time, Disney is telling us that they lowered their losses. So what that has to mean then is if they're bringing in less per user and simultaneously they are lowering the losses, then the expenditures have to have really, they have to be way down in order to compensate for this lower revenue per account.
Well, let's take a look real quick at the segmented thing, because this is what everybody's going to be looking at here. Disney Media, Entertainment, and Distribution. Now, this is the segment of Disney that was effectively created by Bob Chapek. Kareem Daniel was in charge of this. The day after Bob Chapek got fired, hell, 14 hours after Bob Chapek got fired, Kareem Daniel was shown the door. Kareem Daniel was the top lieutenant. He was the head of DMED. DMED was responsible for all this. Let's look right here. Linear networks, right? This is your traditional delivery. This is broadcast. This is ABC. This is ESPN. This is the entire family of Walt Disney networks that air on your local cable or satellite TV provider, right? And then you've got DTC. The revenue, again, for DTC, that went up. You know, great. They've started, remember, they started bringing in advertising tiers. They started bringing in, which didn't really land until the end of this quarter. But their revenues went up due to, we're going to find out a little bit more here. Or excuse me, that's the quarter ended, I'm sorry, for January 1st, 2022 versus December. This is year over year. Pardon my French. So this includes all of the subscription additions for this point. But what I want to look at here is the DTC. So there it is, the quarterly operating loss. And this is what we wanted to find right here. Remember $1.5 billion last quarter? And that is when Bob Chapek and Christine McCarthy had, for several months, if not the entire fiscal year, had guided towards that quarter was probably going to hit peak losses. And a lot of people suspected, a lot of analysts suspected, that the losses for Disney Plus this quarter would come down from the $1.5 billion and be about $1 billion. They are reporting losses at $1.053 billion for DTC. So there it is. It was, the analysts pretty much got it bang on. That's still another $1 billion loss. That now brings the total aggregate losses for DTC on Disney to about $12 billion since they launched Disney Plus.
And to put that in perspective, that's essentially the cost of Galaxy's Edge, the huge expansion that they put in at two of their theme parks. That costs about $1 billion to $1.2 billion. They're losing that every single quarter with Disney Plus.
Yeah, they're losing, or to put it another way, as Pro and I just did in a recent video, they're losing a Disney cruise ship per quarter with DTC.
Yeah, great way to put it too.
You
It's
know,
a great visual.
yeah, exactly. Everybody, if y'all know what those Disney cruise lines like, or you've been on them, they're losing one of those
Right.
per
One is
quarter.
being sunk in the ocean for
Exactly.
Disney's financials.
Every 3 months for DTC. So that's where we are. Now, look, I want to say this very clearly before we get into the call, because I don't want to think, oh, he just loves slamming Disney. A lot of companies, and this is my point, and this is why I was so irked with the whole Bob Chapek situation and how he got terminated, and all this blame is being thrown upon his shoulders. Guess what we've been seeing this earnings season? Comcast, Paramount's coming up. Other streaming services. Guess what's happening right now? Peacock. We covered the Comcast earnings call. If y'all were watching, do you remember one of the key moments when Comcast was guiding towards peak losses for Peacock being this fiscal year? Is anybody talking about firing the CEO of Comcast? Hell no. So this whole idea that this was somehow an isolated event relegated to Disney, all these streaming services are being put through this ringer right now. We're going to see it as a bell curve that's just going to continue on through the rest of this year. It's going to hit Peacock, Comcast. It's going to hit Paramount Plus if they haven't already peaked. We'll find out in their earnings call. It's all coming around. Okay. Again, I think a lot of this was just used as an excuse, and I've made the argument before to this point why I felt this happened, but this, I think, was a lot of it was used as an excuse. Not to say that Chapek was, the second coming of Jesus when it came to Disney. I want to make that clear. But I think he had a shot if he had been given enough time to where I think he had the best shot of making meaningful long-term changes to Disney that would have been to its benefit. And that is why, folks, that Nelson Peltz is making the noise he is now.